Chapter 6: Limitations on Vodou Secret Powers. We have seen earlier in studying free will that it can only exist, that it can exist only within the limited confines imposed by superdeterminism. Within the boundaries of that determinism, our choices are unlimited. The wave function is that coherent superposition of possibilities or choices. We have seen also that observation or measurement of that wave function causes it to actualize into particle or mass while the other possibilities vanish. We have seen also that observation or measurement of that wave function causes it to actualize into particle or mass while the other possibilities vanish. In the many worlds of Hugh Everett, we are located in a specific branch of the parallel universes. And by choosing that one, we become unaware of the other branches. If we want to change branches, we only have to become aware of the existence of that other branch. In nature, some possibilities are more prone to actualization than others, and the conservation laws tend to maintain a status quo or to re-establish the preferential actualization, which is the ordinary reality for us living human beings. We have seen in Zandoric singularities how the Cinderella principle works to bring back normalcy. The Philadelphia experiment is the modern scientific counterpart of the Zandoric journey, and beside the wonders, it is fraught with fatal effects. I hope by now the top secret people have learned how to master the variant of the GUT of Einstein's dream. Entropy is another power or principle that we have to reckon with in all branches of the parallel universes. It is a double edged sword responsible for death and decay, as well as evolution. Where it leads to uniformity, we end in death. When it leads to utter disorder or chaos, we obtain a dissipative structure, which is the source of novelty or evolution to new form, state, or species. Let me take that again. Where it leads to uniformity, we end in death. When it leads to utter disorder or chaos, we obtain a dissipative structure, which is the source of novelty or evolution to new form, state, or species. There exists also a conservative dynamical system in which time evolution is reversible in accordance with the Cinderella principle. The shadowy world of the Vaudoons is subject to those boundary constraints and to others that are not yet very clear to us, such as the Yahweh dimension. Let me take that again. The shadowy world of the Vaudoons is subject to those boundary constraints and to others that are not yet very clear to us, such as the Yahweh dimension, the immanence dimension, the eternal dimension, with their superdeterminism. Traveling from one parallel world to the next is not an easy task in actuality, although the potentiality or possibility exists. There are barriers or constraints inherent to every single world or branch, as well as barriers imposed by the will of others in the universes or by the will of the immanent mind or the eternal mind that is the beginning and the end of all choices in alternate worlds or realities. The Zandoric superposition state is limited in duration by the recurrence law and the conservation laws. The composite state with a Vaudoon does not manifest itself in its full force on a permanent basis. It ebbs and flows according to some constraints. The constraints exist in both sides of the alliance. Some individuals are normally resistant to the invasion by foreign forces. Adorcism required some degree of mediumistic predisposition. In other words, there seems to exist a psychionic barrier in some individuals. Others react tempestuously to the entrance of the entity and present a Bosel type crisis of possession. And this can be corrected by initiation or training. At times, the Loa do not manifest themselves immediately in the Vodou ceremonies in spite of Sometimes, where am I? One second. At times, the Loa do not manifest themselves immediately in the Vodou ceremonies, in spite of the fact that the rituals were performed correctly. They often come late during the service. What is responsible for this lateness? Sometimes other undesirable spirits drop in uninvited, and the Mambo or the Hugan must use his or her power to chase them away or buy their departure with some foods, drinks, or dances. Sometimes the mere presence of some individual or object blocks the coming of the Vaudoons, and in that case, the Vaudou priest will ask the person to leave, or he will proceed to search for and remove the contrary object. It is customarily said that the presence of a hostile Protestant in their midst can block the coming of the Vaudoons. Protestant. At the time of initiation, the adept enters into an alliance with a Vaudoon that becomes his metet or headmaster. They've established a permanent bond that must be served at death by a special ritual called desunin. Through the act of desunin, the entity is then transferred to a chosen person, a son or daughter, or any other relative not previously allied to another Loa. This ritual seems to confirm that the Vodou, or a fractal of his personality, dwells in the adept at all times, although not controlling the psychic complex of the person, like in a full crisis possession. During a service at the Hunfor or in other circumstances, the adept can be mounted by other Loa of the pantheon. Likewise, his metet can possess other individuals in the Hunfor or elsewhere. Thus, the fractal or portion of the lower of the lower is subjected to boundary constraints inherent to his world or to the world of the adept. The term Hugar or Mambo means master of the lower, thus conferring a certain power to the Vodou priest or priestess, a power that the person exerts on the alternate reality of the spirits. The asson that the priest carries during the ceremonies is like a magic wand that reminds us of the mesmer magic wand. The Hugan, like the physician mesmer, can induce a crisis in the adept. For the priest, it is a crisis of possession by a loa. For the physician, it is the dreaded magnetic crisis of the trance. With the ascent, the priest calls on the loa or imposes his command to depart to the obnoxious guest or to the uninvited drop-ins. To prevent inappropriate possession, the adept or a regular of the Hunfor can block the entrance of the spirits with a special setting of the hair, coup de penge, penge, a magical knot in a scarf by penge. How do you say? How do you put a G and an N? Penge, Pesian, Pesian, Pesian. Anyway, a magical knot in a scarf by attaching a piece of wax at one end of the scarf, or by exhibiting a mean demeanor while remaining seated. A Loa who is fond of alcoholic beverages can be prompted to leave by making him drink milk or cola. Why should a spiritual being, a shadow matter entity, be affected by such simple procedures when it is supposed to be more powerful and more resourceful than a human being? The answer most likely resides within the conservation laws, the boundary and natural barriers between parallel universes. The composite state of adorcism imposes also some limitations on the Vaudoons. The discovery of those constraints or secrets come by trial and error from a long period of interactions between the two orders, um, between the two orders of reality that probably goes from prehistoric time to the present, from the Neolithic Sahara to Egypt and the rest of Africa. Among the paraphernalia used to effect the voodoos are specific plants, spices, stones, colors, sounds, perfumes, potions, alcohol, foods, orientation of persons or objects, light or darkness, fire or water, and the creation of inkisi or fetishes or amulets. The inkisi is a psychionic condenser or an artifact loaded with a powerful shadow matter entity, usually of the order of the Matebo, Baka, and the Inkita, malevolent spirits of Bakongo origin. The Inkisi or Wanga is used either to ward off bad vibes, obnoxious spirits, or bad deeds of enemies, or to harm a challenging party. We have seen earlier that the Boko captures a fractal energy or matter of the spirits to create the Inkisi. He does that in the same manner modern technology used electricity, electronics, and magnetism to dominate our ordinary reality. Those artifacts or Inkisi probably produce disturbing vibrations or a chaotic energy field that scrambles the potentials of the dark matter entities. To our Western rationalist logical system, some actions of the voodooists appear ridiculous or childish. To our Western rationalist logical system, some actions of the voodooists appear ridiculous or childish, such as the veering, the swinging around, the pirouetting of the casket bearers carrying the deceased to the cemetery in order to disorient and to confuse the soul with the aim of preventing its return to the house of the loved ones. Normally, in virtue of the quantum principle of ubiquity, the wave function status of the soul should not be restrained to one location. Normally, in virtue of the quantum principle of ubiquity, the wave function status of the soul should not be restrained to one location. It should be able to see the ploy or the strategy of casket bearers and overcome it. However, this strategy seems to work, according to the voodooists. Likewise, the wearing of black clothes and red underwear will keep the phantoms away. The burning of incense or the spread of smoke from burnt orange peelings or other plants can keep spirits away. This looks like pure superstition or acts of ignorance to the non initiate. In the Zondoric singularity of the Zobop flight, a variant consists in the soul leaving the body metamorphosed into a bat. The death of the Zandorus can ensue if the body is reoriented by placing the head at the place of the foot. The soul cannot re enter the body because of that simple change. The death of the Zandorus can ensue if the body is reoriented by placing the head at the place of the foot. The soul cannot re enter the body because of that simple change. The bat will drop dead when the body ceases to live. Again, an entity in quantum land should be able to overcome the simple change, but in reality it cannot do that, and this results in dire consequences. At death, a paradoxical situation exists also for the semedo or shadow matter clone of the individual. In fact, that is confined to a cold underwater habitat. At death, a paradoxical situation exists also for the semedo or shadow matter clone of the individual, in the fact that it is confined to a cold underwater habitat. This sojourn can last 1 to 3 years and one day and must be interrupted by a special ritual of wetemo nandlo that liberates the soul and allows it to enter a sacred urn or pot that will be warmed on a fire and then kept in the home for. The request to be delivered from the underwater abode is often made by the deceased in a dream to a close relative or person. In fact, the semedo does not leave the aquatic world to contact someone, but by its ubiquitous property, it establishes communication in a telepathic manner. It seems that it can exert its potentialities in a controlled fashion, being subjected to some boundary constraints. Souls that are not redeemed by a Bulezin ritual out of the water will remain there as phantoms, baka, or other obnoxious things that the Boko can use to create Nkisi or Wanga, zombie, and other sortileges. The placement of fractal pieces of the initiate soul in a jar or pot in the Desunin ritual at death denotes a limitation and constraint imposed on the entity. After that, it is kept in a secure place at home or at the humfo, away from the sortilege or wizardry of malevolent people. This is also a guarantee that the entire soul will be redeemed at the appointed time. Following the extraction of the entire soul from underwater, the zin must be warmed up from time to time to increase the energy of the spirit. Through the actions of human survivors, the departed ones are elevated to the position of tutelary law of the family, and can afford to give protection to the members of that family. Once a year, a big feast is given in honor of all the deceased in the family, for those redeemed as well as the non redeemed. It seems that on this occasion, all the souls are allowed to come to the party and to enjoy the good food, the drink, and the dances. This reflects control and limitations by laws or principles. In the context of the African Haitian alternate reality, the Loa or the spirits are always in need of a symbolic alliance with the living, to the point that such an alliance imposes a burden on the everyday life of the adept. Some people have rejected the faith because of too much service. Some have found it difficult to do so while remaining Catholics. Their best recourse is to become Protestant. Why is that so? It seems that that the psychological construct of the Catholic voodooist is too intertwined with the syncretism of the two religions to allow a total rejection of voodoo. In the quantum world of the reality, the superposition of the voodoons to the saints has produced a new hybrid entity that persists in spite of denial or rejection. The absolute monotheistic trinity in Protestantism is a powerful barrier to Semitic interferences. It can raise a powerful energy field or psychionic barrier to the assault of the entities. In this context, one has to realize the powerful barrier is created by a new composite state between the believer and the Christian Trinity. A weak faith in Christianity, such as the one shared in Christendom, at large at large under the guise of a varnish, will not be sufficient for all eventualities or spiritual occurrences. Will not be sufficient for all eventualities or spiritual occurrences. I need to take that all the way back. Let's go back here. The absolute monotheistic Trinity in Protestantism is a powerful barrier to Semitic interferences. It can raise a powerful energy field or psychionic barrier to the assault of the entities. It can raise a powerful energy field or psychionic barrier to the assault of the entities. Now, I'm going to go back further than that. Let's go back here. This seems important. In the context of the African Haitian alternate reality, the Loa or the spirits are always in need of a symbolic alliance with the living, to the point that such an alliance imposes a burden on the everyday life of the adept. Some people have rejected the faith because of too much service. Some have found it difficult to do so while remaining Catholics. Their best recourse is to become Protestant. Why is that so? It seems that the psychological construct of the Catholic voodooist is too intertwined with the syncretism of the two religions to allow a total rejection of voodoo. In the quantum world of their reality, the superposition of the voodoos to the saints has produced a new hybrid entity that persists in spite of denial or rejection. There's a new hybrid entity that has been created as a result of the syncretism of Catholicism and Vodou. Interesting. All right. The absolute monotheistic trinity in Protestantism is a powerful barrier to Semitic interferences. It can raise a powerful energy field or psychionic barrier to the assault of the entities. In this context, one has to realize the powerful barrier. One second. In this context, one has to realize the powerful barrier is created by a new composite state between the believer and the Christian Trinity. A weak faith in Christianity, such as the one shared in Christendom at large under the guise of a varnish, will not be sufficient for all eventualities of spiritual occurrences. Hmm. However, it is significant enough to have eliminated the preponderance of the law in North America. Likewise, a scientific mental construct has contributed to the eradication of the fairy faith and the manifestation of these axionic beings such as leprechauns, farfadets, or gnomes to a great extent, although from time to time poltergeists emerge through the ambiguity barrier. The scientific mental construct creates resonances that interfere with the vibrational energy that leads to the singularities. It constitutes boundary constraints to the world of dark matter beings. The scientifically minded can penetrate into the world of the WIMPs by following the technology of Project Rainbow in the Philadelphia experiment. Let's go back here. The scientifically minded can penetrate into the world of the WIMPs by following the technology of Project Rainbow in the Philadelphia experiment. But this is fraught with dangers and annihilation. Subsequent experiments in that field after 1943 might have been responsible for the crash of UFO like machines and their preoccupants in 1947 and 1949. Voodoo ontology and eschatology have revealed to us the desire of the shadow matter entities to enter into symbiotic relation with the visible matter. This is a fatal attraction. However, it is a forbidden attraction. Like all forbidden fruit, it has a powerful driving potential and is at the core of tragedies in human history and in the angelic world. The legends of shadow matter affairs in ancient and modern civilizations have presented us with an array of creatures issued from the union of the two types of physical existence. The legend of Agasu, according to Kizerbo in History of Africa, has a fantastic origin in which the daughter of the king of Tado, named Abibonu, Abigbonu, gave birth to two sons following intercourse with an axionic male panther. One of them is named Agasu. Thus, Agasu's origin is similar to that of the Nephilim in Genesis chapter 6. In the nomenclature listing of the Loa, the panther itself is named Agasu by some adepts. The physical currency of the panther suggests that in prehistoric time, some shadow matter beings have entered into composite state with animals such as dinosaurs, archaeopteryx, snakes, sea monsters, horses, lions, tigers, apes, and different birds, giving actualization to centaurs, winged horses, winged lions, or creatures with multiple heads, Cerberus, or branches like octopus, or creatures like that in the vision of Daniel, Ezekiel, and the Apocalypse of John. Exception must be accounted for in the case of the seraphim, with bizarre morphology that it was created by God in that manner. The prehistoric or antediluvian forbidden intercourses have produced creatures like Agasu that have crossed the singularity threshold and enter into a non rotating black hole situation and are locked forever into another universe. Incursions into our ordinary reality can occur under some specific conditions, such as a weakening of the force field barrier maintained by other powerful dominions or principalities faithful to the will of the Creator. Incursions of our ordinary reality can occur under some specific conditions, such as a weakening of the force field barrier maintained by other powerful dominions or principalities faithful to the will of the Creator. Revelation in Hebrew and Christian scriptures shows that A permanent war is being waged between the forces of the adversary, the ancient serpent, and the forces of Yahweh. In the book of Daniel, an angel was dispatched to materialize an answer to the prophet's prayer, but he was intercepted by a powerful opposing foe called the Prince of the Kingdom of Persia. In that warfare, he was finally seconded by Archangel Michael, who could contend the aggressor, giving the angel the opportunity to fulfill his duty. Daniel 10:12 to 13. In the alternate reality of the voodooist, copulation or sexual intercourse between Loa and Adept is a current event. However, we do not hear about their offspring living among the Haitians today. The three Egyptian mistresses are a familiar topic in Haitian law. Those materialized creatures are supposed to give the best orgiastic encounter to their devotees. They are said to be beautiful, voluptuous, and artful in lovemaking, and they shower their men with wealth. Some of the Erzulis are very jealous and possessive. After their legal marriage to a man on the spiritual level, they do not allow legal civilian marriage with another woman. After their legal marriage to a man on the spiritual level, they do not allow legal civilian marriage with another woman, although they will allow the man to have concubines and one night stands with other belles. The all powerful immanence dimension does not approve of such alliance that can produce offspring. The wrath of the Elohim sent forth a great flood to destroy the civilization of the Nephilim on earth, as copulation between the sons of God with the beautiful daughters of men had created an array of powerful hybrid creatures that threatened the purity of the genetic makeup of Homo sapiens. Noah and his family and other animals that not tainted by the mutations were shielded in the ark while the wrath of God cleaned the earth with deluge and other forces. Some of the monsters might have survived and constituted the dragons of the legends, many of them arising from the sea or large body of water, such as the Loch Ness monster in modern time, or the great dragon worshipped by the Babylonians in Daniel's time. Those creatures are often hideous, abominable, horrible, odious, and destructive. They are bent on mayhem like the Abaddon or Apollyon of the Apocalypse, Revelations 9:11. Powerful energy fields or angels called dominions or principalities keep them at bay, restricting their actions in the abyss, underwater, or inside the lava flow at the center of the earth. But those powerful forces are trying all the time to get out of the prison to create havoc on earth. It is important to recall here that those entities are part of the rebellious crowd that followed Lucifer in his revolution against the Most High in the biblical account. Any alliance with them will end in failure and eternal destruction. In Vodou theology, however, there is a current of thought that associates the Vodous with the defected battalions or legions of angels. Like the sons of God in antediluvian time, they are attracted to the human beings, male or female. In the alternate reality of the Haitians, we do not hear of offspring issued from the union of the Loa and women, probably because of the stringent boundary constraints imposed on such phenomenon. However, some of the Baka, Tetsankor, and other gnome type creatures of the legends might be the result of such alliances. Not all the denizens of the alternate reality are ugly or hideous. Les trois femmes d'Egypte, the three Egyptian mistresses, are said to be dazzlingly beautiful. Dr. Ravi's encounter with Erzuli Danto depicted a beautiful blonde and a beautiful ebony girl, as a Zuli has a dual presentation. The fairies of Ireland and Brittany are notoriously described as drop-dead gorgeous women. The apparition of the hybrid monsters such as the Loch Ness dragon will remain sporadic as their materialization through the cascade of GUT equations is hampered by the vigilance of the watchers or faithful dominions. Our modern technology cannot detect them as long as they don't cross into the material world of our space-time continuum. Even when they do cross the barriers of our universe, they appear harmless because of the restraint imposed on them by the force field of the Watchers. We do not know the specific conditions that allow their apparition, such as a decrease in vigilance on the part of the watchers, or an increase in the power or energy of the Zandoric forces that temporarily break the restraining stronghold of the dominions. As we have seen earlier, the ordinary Vodouns, the benevolent ones, have less restrictions than the Apollyon type entities. They are everyday guests in the Hufor, and their presence can be felt by the adepts and visitors without much difficulty. This is the reason why we suggest that researchers in the field should attend voodoo services in a regular fashion to experience firsthand the force field of the voodoos, so that they can stop theorizing about voodoo in the ivory tower of their Western mental construct and imagination. It may not be easy for them to attend a Zandoric service where the major singularities take place, as reported by Claude Planson, because that would require an initiation with the attendant protection given by the Loa Metet or headmaster. If the researchers want to know more about the inner workings of the Zandoric world, they should become sorcerer apprentice, like Carlos Castaneda, the author of the teaching of Don Juan, a Yaqui way of knowledge. The shadow monsters of Vodou alternate reality can be summoned to appear in designated places by an adept's invocation. One second, let me put this here real quick. The shadow monsters of Voodoo alternate reality can be summoned to appear in designated places by an adept's invocation. This requires great sacrifices on the part of the adept, involving the holocaust of loved ones. My God. Or even putting one's life on the line. The shadow monsters of Voodoo alternate reality can be summoned to appear in designated places by an adept's invocation. This requires great sacrifices on the part of the adept, involving the holocaust of loved ones or even putting one's life on the line. The rituals consist in the reduction of the good watcher's protection or interference, so that the Abaddon like entity may manifest himself. In this encounter, the life of the Zandorist is always at stake, as he can be destroyed by electromagnetic forces, X rays, and radioactivity produced in the process of the entity materialization. That also involves changes in his own status as a devotee, because to withstand the approach of the entity, he must go through the Zandoric singularities himself. The outcome of these transformations cannot always be beneficial, as the spiritual component of the individual will be profoundly altered by composite state with let's see da, da, da. The outcome of these transformations cannot always be beneficial, as the spiritual component of the individual will be profoundly altered by composite state with the destroyer-like entity. That person could be the Wazopop or Loup Garou to have in town, a paranoid schizophrenic Zobop bent on destruction of people around him. It is very doubtful that this person can live a long life after this encounter and its attendant singular metamorphosis. He or she will probably soon join the ranks of other hybrid, obnoxious creatures of Magonia, Toul, and Vilocan. Alliance with the archfiends of the Bizango Macaya, egregore mentioned by H.C. Innocent in Le Noveliste, is not a total guarantee of success in one's enterprise. In Haitian history, Boukman, one of the leaders of the country's independence war, was burned alive by the French, in spite of the fact that the Zandori Vodou was supposed to make him invulnerable to fire, bullets, swords, and poison. The incertitude principle has an analogy in those cases, as the devotees cannot be 100% sure of the arrival of the spirit at the appropriate time for a composite state. Makandal also died at the stake, burned alive by the whites, although the Zandoric entity, for a brief moment, mounted his body and allowed him to break his chains. But he was recaptured and burned to ashes. The presence of the Zandor Loa had been too fleeting. However, Makandal has become a Zandoric Vodou himself, and according to data, it was Makandal who entered into composite state with Jean-Baptiste Vixamar Legrand during the celebrated ceremony of Bois Cayman in August 1791 to push the latter into accepting self-holocaust for the cause of the slaves. His blood was disturbed like that of the sacrificed hog. Jean-Jacques Dessalines, the first Haitian emperor after the Independence War in 1804 against the armies of Napoleon Bonaparte, who was also a self-proclaimed emperor, being a commoner by birth in that same year, 1804, later died of a violent death and became a Zandoric Loa of the Ogu type. The Vaudoons of the egregore were not always present to protect Dessalines and against the machinations of his enemies, although potentially a fractal element of those entities is supposed to be with him at all times. It seems that the fraction was unable to generate the high energy vibratory state that would make him invulnerable. Close encounters with the denizens of alternate realities and full materialization is not always of a benign nature. Adverse effects and sometimes fatality occur. Even entities of the eternal dimension of Yahweh that is completely different of all space-time alternate realities, including the dark matter and shadow matter considered in this work, must take precautions in approaching human environment in materialized forms to avoid a delirious effect. The grandiose apparition of Sinai, the only one of its kind in human history, took place at a certain distance from the crowd. God has set limits around the mountain, and the Israelites were not supposed to cross those boundaries. The prophet Moses was the only one allowed to climb the mountain and to talk face to face with the Almighty. He had to undergo some singularities in order to stay in the presence of the Lord for such a long time, 40 days and 40 nights. He was probably in a trance-like state, and he could have been in more than one dimension. When he returned to the crowd below, there was a radiant glow around him, and he was obliged to cover his face to approach the common mortals. That radiation could harm physical bodies. Moses' mysterious death on Mount Nebo in the land of Moab, and his burial by the Lord himself in a ravine opposite Beth Peor, resemble a singularity where he is translated into another universe. Other people or prophets have been translated to another universe in biblical accounts, such as Enoch and Elijah. In the New Testament account, Moses and Elijah were to reappear briefly on earth during Jesus Christ's transfiguration in the presence of Peter, James, and John on a high mountain. The exact location is not given in the text. Jesus' face became as dazzling as the sun, his clothes as radiant as light. Matthew 17, 1-7. The phenomenon ended with the appearance of a cloud that covered them. Here we see an analogy with the phenomena of the Philadelphia experiment. Peter, James, and John were also engulfed in the experiment, although they did not fully realize it. Peter's intervention, that seems awkward at first, might be the result of their translation into the singularity of the transfiguration. Peter thought he could build tents for them. He was having a psychedelic trance when he said, "Lord, how good that we are here." John 17, verse 4. This is interesting. Da-da-da. Peter, James, and John were also engulfed in the experiment, although they did not fully realize it. The phenomenon ended with the appearance of a cloud that covered them. Here we can see an analogy with the phenomena of the Philadelphia experiment. Let me go back here. Other peoples or prophets have been translated to another universe in biblical accounts, such as Enoch and Elijah. In the New Testament, Moses and Elijah were to reappear briefly. All right, fair enough. Let's go back. Let's keep going. The seed of evolution is embedded in the meaning of the words Hugan and Mambo, that signifies master of the Loa. This tells us that the mental construct of the initiate can control the vodus or the forces. The mental construct of the initiate can control the vodus or the forces. The Loa should be very grateful to find humans willing to accommodate them, to let them partake of their joys and sorrows, share their food, drink, music, dances, and honors. Apparently, there is nothing wrong inviting the souls of departed ancestors, parents, offspring, friends, and relatives to share a moment in one's community of faith, particularly if adorcism brings that psychedelic rapturous experience described by Maya Deren, Claude Planson, and Jacques Ravi. In fact, the Catholic Church has many masses for the benefit of the departed saints in All Saints' Day and the patron saints. They erect beautiful shrines that carry the name of apostles and other teachers of the faith. Furthermore, for religion that does not place the afterlife in existing, that does not place the afterlife existence in heaven, but in a shadowy parallel abode, the extension of the spirit world into the material world of the living beings is very important because this is where the real fun is. Let me go back here. The erect beautiful shrines that carry the name of apostles and other teachers of the faith. Furthermore, for a religion that does not place the afterlife existence in heaven, but in a shadowy parallel abode, the extension of the spirit world into the material world of the living beings is very important because this is where the real fun is. The interaction between Vodouns and adepts is supposed to be a two-way street. If the coming of the Loa is an end in itself, only for the benefit of the entities, then it is not recommendable or desirable. If the Loa leaves the Creator out of the worship service, although they have acknowledged the existence and supremacy of the Almighty, then we are dealing with a self centered creature. The adept who believes in God should impose his mental construct on the Vodouns and remind them. The adept who believes in God should impose his mental construct on the Vodouns and remind them that all glory and praise should go to the Supreme Being because he is the beginning and end of all things. Impose his mental construct on the Vodouns. Why aren't I using something that can highlight text? Seriously, because I don't want to mess up the recording. Anyway, so impose the mental construct on the Vodus and remind them that all glory and praise should go to the Supreme Being. Okay, where should all glory and praise go? Imposing a mental construct on the Vodus. Right. Let me think about that 1 second. Right. The Vodouists in Haiti will be in a better position to do so when the country is out of the feudal, archaic system in which it is buried to enter the age of economic development. The forces of modernization are the ones that are capable of transforming the Vodou mentality and purifying the tradition from superstition, charlatanism, and bondage. When freed of poverty, famine, and endemic diseases, when freed of poverty, famine, and endemic diseases, the Vodouist will be able to impose the worship of the supreme God to the spirits. The Vodouist will be able to impose the worship of the supreme God to the spirits. If they are created to assist human beings in their everyday life affairs, as the Vodouists claim, then they should begin by calling the attention of the adepts on the supremacy of the Elohim. The entities must stop behaving like sinecurists and take their duties seriously by leading men to God Himself. What is a sinecurist? 1 second. Right, that is this chapter, I believe. Let me define sinecurist. Sinecure. Cure. Or is it sin? How do you pronounce this word? Sinecure. Sinecure, right. Sinecure. A position requiring little or no work but giving the holder status or financial benefit. Oh, a cushy number. Money for old rope. Easy job. Okay. So a position requiring little or no work but giving the holder status or financial benefit. Right. Okay. Um Gravy train. All right. So the forces of I like this conclusion here. I like the idea of imposing a mental construct. Where is that? Mental construct, mental construct. Is that the previous page? Yeah, I think it's here. Furthermore, for a religion that does not place the afterlife existence in heaven exactly, but in a shadowy parallel abode, the extension of the spirit world into the material world of the living beings is very important. Mm, because this is where the real fun is, right? The interaction between voodoos and adepts is supposed to be a two-way street if the coming of the Loa is an end in itself. Mhm. Only for the benefit of the entities, then it is not recommendable or desirable. If the Loa leaves the creator out of the worship space, although they have acknowledged the existence and supremacy of the Almighty, then we are dealing with a self centered creature. Bingo. The adept who believes in God should impose his mental construct on the Vodouns. So, what do you believe in here? That should be imposed on the mental construct should be imposed on the Vodouns and remind them that all glory and praise should go to the supreme being. Who should all glory and praise go to? Right? The supreme being. How do you define that? Because he is the beginning and end of all things. The Vodouists in Haiti will be in a better position to do so when the country is out of the feudal archaic system in which it is buried to enter the age of economic development. Hmm. The forces of modernization are the ones that are capable of transforming the Vodou mentality. The forces of modernization and purifying the tradition from superstition, charlatanism, and bondage. When freed of poverty, famine, and endemic diseases, the Vodouist will be able to impose the worship of the supreme God to the spirits. If they are created to assist human beings in their everyday affairs, as the Vodouns claim, then they should begin by calling the attention of the on adepts, adepts on the supremacy of the Elohim. The entities must stop behaving like sign curists, like people that are just paid a lot, but the job is easy. Interesting. So they must stop behaving like sign curists, or how did they say, sinecurists, and take their duties seriously by leading men to God Himself. Interesting. In the case of a Hugan or Mambo, the loa removed from the deceased will designate another initiate for a covenant that will confer the grade of Hugan. Wete mo nan lo means removal of the dead spirit from the waters. That will confer the grade of Hugan or Mambo. Hmm. Oh, I thought we were done. Apparently not. Let's keep going. Let's keep going. Let's see. Okay. Right. Sorry about that. Wait, is something missing? By facts of history. Why does this look? What in the world? Oh, something's missing, I think. Oh, no. 247. What in the world? How do we go from 247 to 238? Ah, shit. Yeah, I think somebody is messing up the book. I wonder if they're combining different versions. Because I think there's a new edition. Hey, man, fuck it. Let me just keep reading. By the facts of history. That's the title of my next book, By the Facts of History. Uh, and they were often clear in words and imagery. However, there is one prediction in the New Testament that never takes place at the appointed time. This is the prediction of the imminent return of Christ at the time of the destruction of the temple by the armies of the Roman general Titus in AD 70. Come on, man. Where's this? What is this? 238. 246. Let me see. 233. 234. 235. Oh, 235. And then we go to from 235 to somebody is taking pages out of the book. Ripping shit out, man. Fuck you. Okay. I'm gonna need to buy the real version. I'm gonna need a paper copy now Somebody is messing up the food chain. Come on, man. Fucking, I'm pissed. There's one prediction in the New Testament that never takes place at the appointed time. This is the prediction of the imminent return of Christ at the time of the destruction of the temple by the armies of the Roman general Titus in AD 70. It did not come to actualization because there was a condition attached to it. That condition was a national recognition of Jesus of Nazareth as a prophet who came in the name of the Lord. Matthew 23:29. I tell you, you will not see me from this time on until you declare, Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. We have to recognize that the second coming, as predicted, has the characteristics of a naked singularity. It would have been the eruption of another universe into our universe in full force. However, all the other events announced in the predictions came to pass because they were parts of our three-dimensional universe, such as the Jewish wars, the siege, the destruction of the temple in AD 70 or CE, and the cities, and the scattering of the people in AD 135 or CE. Some of the voodooists are, in fact, endowed with the gift of clairvoyance, not related to the state of channeling. We are talking about the natural gift similar to that of Nostradamus, the 16th century seer, who, on seeing a poor young monk named Felix Peretti in the 1530s, fell immediately to his knees. When asked for the reason of his gesture, Nostradamus replied that he knelt before His Holiness the Pope. In fact, in the fullness of time, Felix became a cardinal, and in 1585 was elected Pope Sixtus the Fifth. However, that secular prophet, who was a physician, became enmeshed in magic and used also crystal balls and other paraphernalia. He was also well versed in the predictions of John's Apocalypse, which became the backbone for his own predictions published in 1555 under the title Prophecies. Like Nostradamus, some Haitian seers can foresee the future by peering into a bowl of water. Wow. However, all prophecies should be taken with a grain of salt because of boundary constraints and conditions added to their actualization. In our time, the year 2000 has become a litmus test for all predictions concerning the end of time, the end of the world, or the Aquarius age of renewal, the second coming of Christ, the millennial kingdom, or the messianic age. That year will be a test for Christians and non Christian prophets, biblical and secular seers as well, such as Nostradamus and Edgar Cayce. The trans state of possession or the Zandoric singularities can produce healing power. That healing power can induce miraculous cure in the body of the mounted devotee or in the body of other persons. The high energy vibratory state can lead to transmutation by causing transformation at the level of the alternation diagram of being and non being, and can delete a tumoral mass, repair a defective organ, eradicate a foreign invader such as virus or bacteria. However, this power is not successful all the time because of the conservation laws or the Cinderella principle. At times, many at times, more than simple channeling is necessary, such as the production of the Zandoric oddities. The psychic power of faith plays a major role. It can help modulate the forces that can transform reality and violate the command of the conservation laws. The record of failures is very high in the backcountry where people don't have access to modern medical care. Devotees are dying in droves with infections, typhoid, malaria, tuberculosis, hepatitis, syphilis, tetanus, pain, metabolic disease such as diabetes, malnutrition, accidents, poisoning, and particularly from the wrong diagnosis of Wanga and Kisi or demon possession. The diagnosis of Wanga can cause the real disease to go unnoticed, undiagnosed, and untreated. This often ends up in death. The survival of these people is due to the fact is due in fact to a strong immune system that helps them ward off bacterial and non-bacterial assaults. Also, we have to recognize that some of the Hugars and Fayouil and Dr. Fayouil have a solid knowledge of the properties of plants and their medicinal virtues. Also, there is always the problem of charlatanism when we are dealing with practitioners of the magical arts. Some of them use press, oh boy, not this word again, prestidigital, prestidigitation. Some of them use prestidigitation or other strategies. Prestidigitation. Yeah, that's it. Prestidigitation or other strategies to deceive the gullible or the unwary. Some are ventriloquists who pretend to speak to a lower or a Semitic entity. They are not moved by the desire to help the suffering, but act only for monetary gain. Although in the Hum the coming of a Loa can be said to occur with a scientific regularity. Like in a laboratory, we have to be aware of the whimsical character of most of the Vodouns. They have their own agenda, desires, and will. They have to overcome boundary constraints in order to manifest themselves in our ordinary reality. Hmm. They have to overcome boundary constraints. Interesting. They have constraints too, as we do. Hmm. Interesting. They have to overcome boundary constraints in order to manifest themselves in our ordinary reality. Sometimes the Huga or Mambo resorts to faking the presence of a Loa in order to protect his or her reputation. However, in this case, however, a researcher may not record the magnetism or other energy field disturbances induced in the presence of shadow matter entities. It is unfortunate that researchers like Wade Davis, author of The Serpent and the Rainbow, did not have a chance to be initiated in order to discover the true nature of the alternate reality. Of course, as a specialist in exobotany, he was interested in plants, nomenclature, and chemical derivatives, and in this regard, he was allowed to do a great job. However, besides that, he leaves us with the impression that everything else is a big play, carnival, or political underground city. Hmm. I've read Serpent and the Rainbow actually. It's quite a good book, but this is a very interesting um, critique. Anyway, back to the book. However, besides that, he leaves us with the impression that everything else is a big play, carnival or political underground city. Hmm. In Haiti, his good mentors and friends who introduced him to different secret societies were well aware of limitations imposed on their goodwill. However, not all researchers will be willing to take on initiation because of some tenets of their religion or denomination in Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. Because of their personal covenant with Yahweh, the Israelites were forbidden to take any initiation in alternate reality of the surrounding nations. In the book of Leviticus, it is said, "Do not go to the mediums or consult fortune tellers, for you will be defiled by them. I, the Lord, am your God. Should anyone turn to mediums and fortune tellers and follow their wanton ways, I will turn against such a one and cut him off from his people." Leviticus 20, verse 6. In Deuteronomy 13, 3 to 4, it says, Even though the sign or wonder ha- even though the sign or wonder he has foretold you comes to pass, pay no attention to the words of that prophet or that dreamer. So wait, the signs or wonder he has foretold you come to pass, but don't pay attention. Interesting. As the Potomita or central pole is concerned, the Israelites were told, You shall not plant a sacred pole of any kind of wood beside the altar of the Lord your God, which you will build, nor shall you erect a sacred pillar such as the Lord your God detests. Deuteronomy 16:21 to 22. See also Deuteronomy 18:10 to 12. Let there not be found among you anyone who immolates his son or daughter in the fire, nor a fortune teller, soothsayer, charmer, diviner, or caster of spells, nor one who consults ghosts and spirits, or seeks oracles from the dead. Anyone who does such things is an abomination to the Lord. Thus, we understand the hesitations that some researchers and theorists have will have in reference to initiation. However, The deep involvement of initiation is not necessary to observe, witness, and record paranormal happenings in the midst of the adepts during their ceremonies at their places of services. This inquiry is important, very important, for those who believe in this fin de siècle, that evolution of the 21st century men and women will take place in the realm of higher consciousness. This inquiry is very important for those who believe in this fin de siècle, that evolution of the 21st century men and women will take place in the realm of higher consciousness. As an introduction to that end, familiarity with manifestations of alternate realities can be attained in the Hunfo and in the land of the Vaudoons. Attainment of higher consciousness in our vision, logic, information society seems to be the next step in our development if we want to compete successfully with modern technology. There should be means to exploit the other 90% of our brain to shift the equation in the permanent alternation toward wave function and thus achieve ubiquity, omniscience, and teletransportation. We should be able to remain in good health by eradication of pathogens, metabolic derangements, organ dysfunction, and cancerous development through the high energy vibratory state of the self induced trance. Our psychic force should be able to mold reality at will. We should become immortal by restructuring our carnal body through the transforming power of our spiritual clone. We should become immortal by restructuring our carnal body through the transforming power of our spiritual clone. For those who want to maintain their covenant with Yahweh, such a higher state of existence should be reached without alliance with dangerous entities or other shadow matter denizens. However, no one would like to go the way of Project Rainbow and enter into oblivion, spontaneous combustion, or imprisonment into another universe through Einstein Rosen bridges. There is always the possibility of abduction by creatures of the shadow reality that are not bent on helping human beings, but on helping themselves, having their own agenda, their own dreams and desires. Psychotronics in the 21st century will probably aim at discovering ways to induce high energy vibratory states without deleterious effects. Deleterious and delirious. Anyway, the formula can be as simple as concentration, meditation, relaxation, relaxation, or self-induced hypnosis. Because this is another face of science fiction, we can imagine the creation of a translation chamber where the subject enters to meditate or will his metamorphosis into the alternate reality. That means he will remain in control of the dematerialization and rematerialization process. The problem with Project Rainbow was the fact that the scientists stumbled into something they were not looking for. The result was an accident. But that accident revealed something weirder than they could imagine or suppose. It revealed that the impossible is possible. The Disney world of Quantum Land has merged with the Zandoric Wonderland. But the 21st century explorer wants to enjoy the psychedelic world of those lands without the harmful side effects of one or the bondage of the other. That is going to require a lot of research in the coming century through collaboration between the super developed countries and the third world knowledge, the African Haitian connection. There we go. We need collaboration. That's it. I like that idea. That's the only way we can progress. That is going to require a lot of research in the coming century through collaboration between the super developed countries and third world knowledge, the African Haitian connection. There will be a lot of trial and error, accidents, and mishaps before the new technology can offer easy operation like that of a fax machine. We have to realize that people cannot remain in the Zandoric trance forever. An individual can enter that state quite often, many times during a day, or every day of the week for a few hours or a whole week at a time. But not permanently every day of his life. He must come down to ordinary reality to lead a normal life and partake of the economy of this world. The experience of the Upanishadic seers has demonstrated that in order to attain liberation, moksha, from the bondage of ordinary reality and the constraints of the wheel of life, they have to leave the tumult of city life to enter the stage of forest dweller and that of the ascetic or sannyasa. Everyone in a country and the government cannot enter the ascetic life, cannot enter the ascetic life. All activities of ordinary reality would cease and death would ensue. It is likewise for the Zandoric state. Furthermore, we have to realize that the science fiction aspect of our spiritual adventure, the enlightenment and attainment of the highest state of consciousness by Zandoric formula, may not be achievable in the near future, nor in the 21st century or 22nd century, because of the inherent dangers. People are simply afraid of going through wormholes and the bridges of no return. Thus, the only option available presently to attain Zandoric enlightenment is initiation in the Zobop or Bizango sects with their attendant servitude. The covenant and the rituals are loaded with dangers according to Cloud Planson, who described their gathering as heavy, fear-laden, Spartan, cruel, cryptic, hateful, and completely different from the good neighbor style of affairs seen with the jovial gathering of Igbo or Nago worship. In considering the boundary constraints of Vodou reality, we have to ask questions about the dynamics of progress in that society at large. Is there a blueprint for progress as far as the welfare of the peasants is concerned? Did Vodou theology help the mass in social reform and development? No one could doubt the importance of the role played by Vodou faith in the Haiti Independence War at the beginning of the 19th century. Vodou was the crucible where the hopes of freedom fighters and their followers, the slaves, were transformed into victory. Christianity, as taught by the Catholic clergy in Saint-Domingue, Haiti, mandated resignation and inoculated messianic dreams. Christianity, as taught by the Catholic clergy in Saint-Domingue, Haiti, mandated resignation and inoculated messianic dreams. Interesting. The Christian world should recognize that their conquest in the secular realm came after an about face in which the kingdom of heaven has become the kingdom or empire of the church. Christians pretend to foster the cause of Christ while wearying to establish their own hegemony on the planet. In building their dominion over the nations of the world, Western powers have had to abandon the eschatology of the eschatological vision of the church. The humble flock of the first century has become the kingdom that shall inherit the planet. The humble flock of the first century has become the kingdom that shall inherit the planet. It was catapulted to the helm of this world's affairs. And by the 19th and 20th centuries, its theologians declared God dead. It is truly ironic that in the 20th century, a return to God will be spearheaded by secular scientists, many of those physicists who have created quantum physics, who suddenly realized that the reality they were working on was an illusion and that another absolute reality must exist. Many think they can find that immanent reality in mysticism. Vodou, like Christianity, Hinduism, or Buddhism, will evolve in time or must evolve in order to help the Haitian peasant come out of the doldrums, the misery, the poverty that has plagued them for a long time. The Catholic Church in Haiti, with the help of the government, has tried to eradicate the Vodou tradition in the country by using forced conversion and destruction of the Humfo and paraphernalia. Green, 1993. In proceeding in that matter, the establishment has created a situation similar to that of the Jews in Europe when they were forced to convert to Christianity. They remained clandestine Judaics. In Haiti, the syncretism of Vodou Christianity was reinforced. In moments of crisis, suffering, persecution, or dire needs of health and shelter, the Vodouist has found solace in the community of devotees. The kibbutz type of lakou has been more beneficial to the Haitians. than the Vaudoons themselves. There is a tradition of brotherhood, love, care, respect, and support that explains the extraordinary hospitality of the Haitians. Strangers or foreigners have come among them. Strangers or foreigners among them are astonished by their good predisposition and conviviality. Haiti will not get rid of the Vodou tradition because it is part of their civilization, a heritage they have received from the motherland Africa or Nan Guinea. No one in their right mind would think of eradicating Hinduism or from Asia. It is acceptable to think in terms of evolution or elimination of superstitions, charlatanism, spiritual and social bondage. The Vodouist finds great comfort in the midst of devotees and the support of their Loa. The support offered by the Loa is of a sympathetic nature in the sense that they are sharing the pathos of the adepts. They cannot really change the condition of the country or the status of the people. During the independence war, they seconded the orientation, the hope, the desire, the dreams of the slaves and their leaders. If the slaves wanted to remain in bondage, the Loa would have remained in bondage with them. If the slaves were vying for freedom and independence, the Loa would have settled for that as well. In other words, the reality of the Vaudoons greatly depends on the mental construct or the spiritual choices of the adepts. The Loa depends on the living for their existence and subsistence more than the living depend on them. That is the reason why they are so demanding in services and rituals. They coerce their devotees by using fear because they really can harm them if they are allowed to do so. They need the help of the living in order to harm the living. What? They need the help of the living in order to harm the living. Huh. Because of the boundary constraints. The seed of evolution is embedded in the meaning of the words Huga and Mambo, that signifies master of the Loa. This tells us that the mental construct of the initiate can control the Vaudoons or the forces. The Loa should be very grateful to find humans willing to accommodate them, to let them partake of their joys and sorrows, share their food, drink, music, dances, and honors. Apparently, there is nothing wrong inviting the souls of departed ancestors, parents, offspring, friends, and relatives to share a moment in one's community of faith, particularly if adorcism brings that psychedelic rapturous experience described by Maya Deren, Claude Planson, and Jacques Ravi. I've read this part before. I think this is where this might be a new version of the book. Because when I read this before, a bit further up, it didn't name this guy right here, Claude Planson. I don't remember this guy's name, but I remember Jacques Ravi. It said Maya Deren and Jack. It didn't say nothing about no Claude. And this is definitely a sentence I've read already, but it's been changed. I don't remember reading apparently, but maybe I'm tripping. Either way, I don't know what's happening, but somebody is stitching the book wrong, cuz. In fact, the Catholic Church has many masses for the benefit of the departed. Okay, I've read this before. In All Saints' Day and the patron saints, they erect beautiful shrines that carry the name of the apostles and other teachers of the faith. Furthermore, for a religion that does not place the afterlife existence in heaven, yep, we've read all this before, but in a shadowy parallel abode, the extension of the spirit world into the material world of the living beings is very important because this is where the real fun is, right? Oh, I love that sentence. I love that phrase, that paragraph right here. For a religion that does not place the afterlife existence in heaven, but in a shadowy parallel abode, the extension of the spirit world into the material world of the living beings is very important because this is where the real fun is. The interaction between Vaudoons and adepts. The interaction between Vaudoons and adepts is supposed to be a two-way street. If the coming of the Loa is an end in itself, only for the benefit of the entities, then it is not recommendable or desirable. If the Loa Leaves the creator out of the worship service. Ah, leaves him out, as in, oh, you be there, I'll be here. Now I understand the sentence. If the lower leaves the creator out of this worship service. That's an interesting bird sound. I wonder if there's an app to record bird sounds and then it tells you what kind of bird that is. Anyway, if the lower leaves the creator out of the worship service, although they have acknowledged the existence and supremacy of the Almighty, then we are dealing with a self centered creature. The adept who believes in God should impose his mental construct on the Vodus and remind them that all glory and praise should go to the Supreme Being. To the Supreme Being. Hmm. Because he is the beginning and end of all things. The Vodouists in Haiti will be in a better position to do so when the country is out of the feudal archaic system in which it is buried. To enter the age of economic development, the forces of modernization are the ones that are capable of transforming the Vodou mentality and purifying the tradition from superstition, charlatanism, and bondage. When freed of poverty, famine, and endemic diseases, the Vodouist will be able to impose the worship of the supreme God to the spirits. If they are created to assist human beings in their everyday affairs, as the Vodouns claim, then they should begin by calling the attention of the adepts on the supremacy of the Elohim. The entities must stop behaving like sinecurists and take their duties seriously by leading men to God Himself. Powerful. Oh, man. Now, are we truly done or is this going to start again? There we go. Come on, man. Taking me on a little trip. Oh, what's that paragraph that I really liked? The one about immortality. I love that paragraph. Oh man. Uh, yeah, this is done. So might as well just end this. You end the thing and then go find the next one in the playlist. You know what I mean? Da, 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 da. Yeah. Oh man, I ain't gonna find it, am I? Will I find it? Zumpa, Tabari. Where is it? Where is it? Oh, I thought I saw it. Maybe I should just search immortality. I wanna be immortal. I wanna live in beauty forever, forever. Nope, that's not it. Maybe I should just go immortal. Immortal. There we go. What page am I even looking for? Come on, man. The word mortal, use my Breton. Nope, nope, nope. I'm looking for 200 and something. 200, 200, 200. Yeah. Okay, there we go. I think this is it right here. Oh man, this is a powerful paragraph right here. Oh man. Attainment of higher consciousness in our vision logic information society seems to be the next step in our development if we want to compete successfully with modern technology. There should be means to exploit the other 90% of our brain to shift the equation in the permanent alternation toward wave function and thus achieve ubiquity, omniscience, and teletransportation. We should be able to remain in good health by eradication of pathogens. Man, I'm about to declare this. Shit. Yo, let me see. Mm, we should be able to remain in good health by eradication of pathogens, metabolic derangements. I will eradicate metabolic derangements, organ dysfunction, and cancerous development through the high energy vibratory state of a self induced trance. Where we at? Our psychic force should be able to mold reality at will. Come on, man. That sounds heavy. We could become immortal by restructuring our carnal body through the transforming power of our spiritual clone for those who want to maintain their covenant with Yahweh. Such a higher state of existence should be reached without alliance with dangerous entities or other shadow matter denizens. Talk about it. Yes, sir. Yeah. All right, man. See you in the next chapter. Pause, play, end.